3 weeks ago, China issued a single-page directive, 14 lines of text, no dramatic press conference, no threats, no warnings, just a bureaucratic announcement that certain exports to Japan were now prohibited. Most people ignored it. Another trade spat between Asian neighbors. Standard geopolitical noise. Nothing to worry about. But buried in those 14 lines was a weapon more powerful than aircraft carriers, more devastating than economic sanctions, more crippling than any military blockade. China had just cut off Japan's access to rare earth elements, the 17 metallic elements that make modern technology possible. The materials inside every smartphone, every electric vehicle, every guided missile, every wind turbine, every MRI machine. Within 72 hours, Japan's economy started bleeding, not slowly, fast. The Nikkei stock index fell 1.3%, then another 1.2%, then 1.1%. 3 consecutive days of losses. Over 400 billion yen in market value evaporated in a week. That's $2.5 billion gone from investor panic alone. But that's nothing compared to what's coming. Nomura Research Institute, one of Japan's most respected economic forecasters, ran the numbers. If China maintains this ban for just 3 months, Japanese businesses will lose 660 billion yen, $4.2 billion in direct economic damage. 3 months. If the ban lasts a full year, 2.6 trillion yen, 16.5 billion. Japan's GDP drops by 0.43%. Not from recession, not from market crash, from China flipping a switch and cutting off 17 elements most people have never heard of. This is not new. We have seen this before. When the Roman Empire fell, it wasn't because of barbarian military power. It was grain supply disruption and the severing of trade routes. The empire collapsed when it could no longer feed itself. When Egyptian wheat shipments ceased, when African grain stopped flowing through Alexandria, Rome starved and revolted. The legions couldn't fight when the population couldn't eat. Supply lines matter more than battle lines. When the British Empire eroded, it wasn't because of lost naval power. It was the inability to control access to raw materials necessary for industrial production. Power remains with those who control resources. As long as Britain controlled Indian cotton, Australian wool, South African diamonds, Malayan tin, British industrial supremacy remained intact. When those supply chains broke, when colonies gained independence, when resources flowed to other markets, the empire withered. The Royal Navy remained strong, but it couldn't protect an empire built on resource control when the resources themselves were lost. When the Weimar Republic collapsed, it wasn't because of weak democratic institutions. It was the social tensions created by external dependency and economic fragility. Germany's economy depended on imports for industrial production, coal from the Ruhr, iron ore from France, agricultural products from Eastern Europe. When foreign trade was disrupted by war reparations and international isolation, when hyperinflation destroyed the currency, when supply chains collapsed, the system disintegrated. Economic vulnerability creates political instability. Always. This is not just trade restriction. This is the exposure of fragility at the foundation of modern industrial civilization. Before we understand why this weapon is so devastatingly effective, you need to understand what rare earth elements actually are. Because the name is misleading. They're not rare in terms of abundance in Earth's crust. Some are actually more common than copper or gold. What makes them rare is how difficult they are to extract and process. There are 17 rare earth elements. They have names most people cannot pronounce. Neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, samarium, gadolinium, praseodymium, europium, yttrium, lanthanum, cerium. These are not materials you see or touch in daily life, but they are inside almost every piece of modern technology you use. Your smartphone has a tiny vibration motor. That motor uses neodymium magnets, the strongest permanent magnets that exist. Without neodymium, your phone can't vibrate. The screen uses europium and terbium for color display. The speaker uses neodymium and dysprosium. One smartphone contains trace amounts of 9 different rare earth elements. Electric vehicles use even more. A Tesla Model 3 has about 1 kilogram of rare earth elements in its electric motors. The magnets that convert electricity into motion are made from neodymium and dysprosium. Without those magnets, electric cars don't work. You can't replace them with regular magnets. The performance isn't there. The efficiency drops by half. Electric vehicles as we know them don't exist without rare earth magnets. Think about what powers our world. Green energy, right? Wind turbines are a huge part of that. But did you know that inside every large wind turbine, There are between 200 and 600 kilograms of rare earth elements. These are used in the powerful generator magnets. Our global push for renewable energy is completely dependent on a steady supply of rare earths. No rare earths, no wind power at the scale we need to replace fossil fuels. But the real strategic value, the part that keeps military planners awake at night, is defense. This is where it becomes a matter of critical national security. Take the F-35 fighter jet, the most advanced fighter in the world. Every single F-35 requires 420 kilograms of rare earth materials. That's nearly half a ton per plane. They're in the permanent magnets for the electric motors, the power generation system, the actuators that control flight surfaces, and the advanced avionics. The United States plans to build over 2,000 of these jets for itself and its allies. Each one needs a huge amount of rare earths, materials that, right now, only China can supply at scale. And it's not just fighter jets. Guided missiles rely on rare earths for their guidance systems. The gyroscopes that keep them on target, the infrared sensors that detect heat signatures, the electronics that process targeting data, Tomahawk cruise missiles, Javelin anti-tank missiles, Patriot air defense systems, all of them are dependent on rare earths. It extends to the seas as well. Modern naval vessels, like the Virginia-class attack submarine, use rare earth permanent magnets in their electric drive propulsion systems. These motors are more efficient, quieter, and more powerful than traditional propulsion, giving them a huge tactical advantage. But again, they are completely dependent on Chinese supply chains. Even the tanks on the ground, like the M1 Abrams, are filled with rare earth components. The laser rangefinders use neodymium. The night vision systems use lanthanum. The targeting computers are packed with them. The entire American military-industrial complex, the backbone of its global power, is built on a foundation of 17 elements that China overwhelmingly produces, processes, and controls. Now, here's the key thing most people don't understand. It's not just about mining. China doesn't just dig these elements out of the ground. They control the entire process, the refining, the separation, and the manufacturing of the final materials. The United States has one major rare earth mine, Mountain Pass in California. It produces rare earth ore. But guess where that ore has to be shipped for processing? China. Why? Because there are no large-scale commercial rare earth processing facilities in America. We mine it, send it to China. They process it into usable metals and magnets, and then they sell it back to us. China controls 90% of the world's rare earth processing capacity, not mining processing. That's the choke point. Even if other countries start mining rare earths, they still have to send the raw ore to China. Building these processing plants costs billions of dollars, takes years, and creates serious environmental challenges that most developed nations are unwilling to deal with. This is how China built its monopoly, not by cornering the market on the raw deposits, but by mastering and controlling the entire supply chain. They built the infrastructure, they accepted the environmental costs, they subsidized the industry for decades, driving competitors out of business until they were the only game in town. And now, they have immense leverage over every advanced economy on Earth, and they're starting to use it. 85% of Japan's rare earth imports come from China. For heavy rare earths, the most critical ones for defense and high-tech applications, that figure is 100%. Complete dependency. For the United States, the situation is just as dire. 85% general dependency, and 100% for those crucial heavy rare earths like dysprosium, terbium, and europium. These are the elements that make modern technology possible. They can withstand high temperatures, have precise magnetic properties, and enable the miniaturization of complex electronics. And they almost exclusively come from deposits that China either controls or processes. So what happens if China decides to cut off the supply? F-35 production doesn't just slow down, it stops. The only alternative would be to buy them on the black market at sky-high prices from intermediaries, which is unreliable, expensive, and still ultimately leads back to China. America does have a strategic stockpile. The national defense stockpile contains some rare earth materials, but the quantities are tiny. It's enough for a few months of defense production at best, not years. The stockpile was designed to cover short-term disruptions, not the collapse of an entire global supply chain. Japan learned this the hard way. After China's 2010 embargo during a territorial dispute, they desperately tried to find alternatives. They looked into recycling rare earths from old electronics, a process called e-waste mining. It works, but it only produces maybe 10 to 15% of Japan's needs. Not nearly enough. They tried building strategic stockpiles, but those only last for a few months and are expensive to maintain. Companies eventually drew them down to cut costs. They also tried developing domestic processing plants, but stringent environmental regulations and public opposition made it nearly impossible. Nobody wants a facility that produces toxic and radioactive waste in their backyard. This isn't just Japan's problem. It's a problem for America, for Europe, for every advanced economy. We all share the same vulnerability, the same dependency, the same lack of credible alternatives. Throughout history, great powers have fallen when they could no longer secure essential resources. The grain of our modern technological civilization is rare earths, and one country controls the granary. The Pentagon is fully aware of this crippling dependency. For over a decade, it has published reports warning about this exact scenario. The Defense Department has funded research into alternatives, recycling programs, and exploration for new deposits. But none of it has been fast enough or large enough to break free from China's grip. Why? Because you can't undo a 40-year head start overnight. China built the mines. They built the processing facilities. They absorbed the environmental fallout. They subsidized their industry through years of losses. They developed the expertise and even hold the patents on the most efficient processing methods. To catch up would take decades and tens of billions of dollars. America is trying, but trying won't build a fighter jet if the supply chain is severed next year during a crisis over Taiwan. And make no mistake, a crisis is coming. It's not a matter of if, but when. And when it does, the world will discover who truly holds the power in the 21st century. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the topics that shape our world. The trigger will be Taiwan. It always was going to be Taiwan. China considers Taiwan a breakaway province. Reunification is core to Chinese nationalism and Communist Party legitimacy. Xi Jinping has made it clear that Taiwan reunification will happen during his tenure, by force if necessary. The United States has committed to Taiwan's defense. The Taiwan Relations Act obligates America to provide Taiwan with defensive weapons. Multiple presidents have said America would intervene if China invades. So we have inevitable collision. China will eventually move on Taiwan militarily. Either blockade or invasion. America will respond, either with weapon shipments, naval presence, or direct military intervention. And when America responds, China will weaponize rare earths. Here's how it unfolds. China begins military operations around Taiwan. U.S.N. Naval forces deploy to the region. America imposes sanctions on China. China responds conventionally, but the real weapon isn't kinetic. It's economic. China announces immediate export controls. No rare earth exports to the United States. No rare earth exports to any country that supports U.S.N. Sanctions. Japan, South Korea, Australia, UK. Any country that sides with America gets cut off. Within days, American defense contractors face supply disruptions. Lockheed Martin can't get rare earth magnets for F-35 production. Raytheon can't get components for missile guidance systems. The Pentagon tries to use stockpiles, but stockpiles are finite. Weeks or months of supply at wartime production rates. Not enough. Alternative sources don't exist at scale. Mongolia can't ramp up production overnight. Australia's processing capacity is a fraction of American needs. American allies try to help, but they're cut off too. Within 3 months, American military production slows dramatically. Within 6 months, it grinds toward halt for advanced systems requiring rare earths. The aircraft sitting on production lines don't get finished. The missiles in inventory don't get replaced. Meanwhile, China's military production continues because China has rare earths. All of them. Domestic supply. And while America's precision weapons run short, China keeps building. The political pressure becomes unbearable. Defense contractors lobby Washington. Congressional representatives from districts with defense plants demand action. The economy starts hurting. Stock markets react, and China makes clear the terms. Withdraw from Taiwan. Lift sanctions. Recognize Chinese control. Then rare earth exports resume. America faces an impossible choice. Abandon Taiwan and accept humiliation. Or continue fighting while military production collapses and economic damage mounts. This is what rare earth leverage makes possible. China doesn't need to sink American aircraft carriers, doesn't need to win naval battles. Just cut of 17 elements and watch American military capability degrade over months while political pressure forces Washington to back down. This leverage grows stronger every year. America fails to build alternative supply chains. Every year China consolidates control. Every year American dependence deepens. The window to prevent this scenario is closing fast. So if this threat is so clear, so obvious, so documented, why hasn't America fixed it? Why are we still dependent on China for rare earths when we've known about this problem for 15 years? The answer is complicated. Mix of economics, politics, environment, and time. Mining and processing rare earths is not profitable at small scale. China built scale over 40 years. They started in the 1980s, accepted decades of losses. Government subsidies kept operations running. Environmental costs were ignored. When Chinese rare earths got cheap, other countries' mines closed. Now, trying to restart domestic production means competing with entrenched Chinese operations that have scale, expertise, and government backing. Politics makes it worse. Rare earth mines are not popular. Local communities don't want them. The processing creates toxic waste, radioactive contamination. Permitting takes forever. Then there's time. Even if America decided tomorrow to build comprehensive rare earth supply chain, it takes years. Find deposits, drill, prove reserves, get permits, build mine. All that is 5 to 10 years. Then build processing facilities. Another 5 years at least. From decision to operational supply chain, 10 to 15 years minimum. Compare that to China's timeline for Taiwan. Most analysts think China's military will be ready for Taiwan invasion by 2030 at latest, maybe 2027 or 2028. That's 1 to 4 years from now. America's rare earth supply chain won't be built for another 10 to 20 years. The math doesn't work. History teaches us that empires collapse not from external forces, but from their own vulnerabilities. Resource dependency, loss of control over critical supply chains, erosion of strategic autonomy. This is not just about rare earths. This is a symptom of the fragility at the foundation of contemporary industrial civilization. China crippled Japan with 14 lines 3 weeks ago. America is next. Empires don't collapse overnight. They unravel quietly, and then all at once. The event is not the warning. The reaction is the warning.